For nearly 3 decades, the Berlin Wall stood as a stark symbol of the division between East and West Germany, separating families, dividing a city, and symbolizing the ideological struggle of the Cold War. Its construction in 1961 marked the physical manifestation of the Iron Curtain that had fallen across Europe. Behind this wall, the German Democratic Republic, better known as the DDR, was established in the aftermath of World War II in the Soviet-occupied zone of Germany. The DDR was founded on October 7, 1949, under the leadership of the Socialist Unity Party. This new state was bound by the tenets of socialism and held tightly in the grip of the Soviet Union. Life in the DDR was markedly different from that in the West. The socialist government controlled all aspects of life, from the economy to the education system and even the media. The state-owned economy was characterized by its focus on heavy industry at the expense of consumer goods, leading to a standard of living that was significantly lower than that in West Germany. But the Berlin Wall and the DDR were not just about economic differences. They were about control and ideology. The socialist government of the DDR limited political freedoms, censoring any form of dissent and conducting widespread surveillance on its citizens. The Stasi, or the State Security Service, became infamous for its tactics of intimidation and its network of informants that permeated every aspect of East German society. The DDR was a state characterized by repression and control, where the individual was subordinated to the collective, and dissent was not tolerated. It was a state where the wall was not just a physical barrier, but also a symbol of the ideological divide between East and West. Socialism and capitalism, repression and freedom. The DDR was characterized by a repressive regime, with limited political freedoms, censorship, and widespread surveillance. The Berlin Wall, in its stark, concrete reality, stood as a potent symbol of this division, a division that would only be overcome with the fall of the wall and the end of the DDR. Throughout the 1980s, discontent simmered in East Germany, fueled by economic stagnation, political repression, and a desire for freedom. The German Democratic Republic, or DDR, was a land of contrasts. While it touted itself as a beacon of socialist success, the reality for many of its citizens was far from this idealized image. The economy of the DDR was plagued by inefficiencies and shortages. The state controlled all aspects of the economy, and while this meant guaranteed employment, it also meant low wages, poor quality goods, and a lack of innovation. This economic stagnation led to growing dissatisfaction among the citizens of the DDR, who could see the prosperity of their West German counterparts through the media and personal contacts. But it wasn't just the economic hardships that fueled the growing discontent. The political climate in the DDR was one of repression and control. The Stasi, the East German secret police, was a constant presence, spying on citizens, suppressing dissent, and instilling a climate of fear. Political dissent was not tolerated, and those who dared to speak out against the regime faced severe consequences. Yet, despite the risks, a brave few began to raise their voices. Dissidents took many forms. There were protests and demonstrations, underground publications, and even daring attempts to escape to the West. These acts of dissent were a clear sign that the people of the DDR were yearning for change, for freedom, and for a better life. The authorities responded with further repression, but this only served to fuel the flames of discontent. The people of the DDR were growing increasingly bold, and the regime was losing its grip on power. The stage was set for a dramatic change. Despite efforts to portray itself as a workers' paradise, the DDR faced economic challenges and discontent among its citizens. The wall that had been built to keep them in was becoming a symbol of their oppression, and the desire to tear it down was growing stronger by the day. The tipping point came on November 9, 1989, when East German authorities announced that travel restrictions to the West would be lifted. This proclamation was a beacon of hope for countless East Germans who had been yearning for freedom, a life beyond the confines of the Berlin Wall. The news spread like wildfire, igniting a spark of anticipation and excitement in the hearts of the people. For years they had lived under the shadow of the wall, a concrete manifestation of the divide between the East and the West. Now, they were on the precipice of a new era, an era of freedom and possibility. As the news of the lifted restrictions echoed through the streets of East Berlin, people started to gather. They came in droves, their faces reflecting a mixture of disbelief and jubilation. The air was charged with an electricity of imminent change. The Berlin Wall, once an impenetrable barrier, was about to crumble under the collective will of the East German people. The border guards, taken aback by the sheer magnitude of the gathering crowd, were at a loss. They were faced with a choice: to uphold the orders of a regime that was losing its grip, or to yield to the unstoppable wave of change. The decision was made. The gates were opened. A tidal wave of humanity poured into West Berlin, marking the beginning of the end of the Berlin Wall. In scenes of jubilation and disbelief, thousands of East Berliners flocked to the border crossings. The guards, overwhelmed by the sheer numbers, eventually opened the gates. The fall of the Berlin Wall was not just a physical event, it was a symbolic moment of triumph over division and oppression. It was a testament to the power of the human spirit and the unyielding desire for freedom and unity. That fateful night, under the cold November sky, marked a turning point in history. The fall of the Berlin Wall was the first domino to fall, setting in motion a series of events that would lead to the end of the German Democratic Republic and the reunification of Germany. The fall of the Berlin Wall marked the beginning of the end for the DDR. In the months that followed, protests and demonstrations erupted across East Germany, leading to the collapse of the regime. The wall's fall was a powerful catalyst, sparking a wave of change that swept over East Germany. The people, once silenced, found their voices, demanding democracy, freedom, and an end to the DDR. As the wall crumbled, so too did the DDR's iron grip. The government's attempts to maintain control proved futile against the unyielding tide of change. The Socialist Unity Party's leadership began to falter, their authority crumbling as the people's demands grew louder. The clamor for change wasn't just confined to the streets. The political landscape was shifting dramatically. Opposition groups, once forced to operate in the shadows, began to emerge, gaining strength and momentum. Round-table talks were initiated, providing a platform for these groups and the government to negotiate the future of East Germany. The pressure was mounting. The government, facing an insurmountable wave of protest and international scrutiny, had no choice but to concede. In March of 1990, the first and only free elections in the DDR's history were held, signaling the end of the regime's rule. However, the story didn't end there. The question of reunification loomed large. The prospect of a single united Germany was met with a mixture of anticipation and apprehension. Negotiations were complex, the task monumental, and the stakes incredibly high. Yet in the face of these challenges, the desire for unity prevailed. On October 3, 1990, after months of painstaking negotiations, the two Germanys became one. The German Democratic Republic was dissolved, and the Federal Republic of Germany was born anew. On October 3, 1990, Germany was officially reunified, marking the end of the DDR and the beginning of a new era of democracy and freedom for the German people. The fall of the Berlin Wall and the collapse of the DDR weren't just monumental historical events. They were a testament to the indomitable spirit of the German people, a triumph of their desire for freedom and unity over division and oppression.
In the chilling autumn of 1888, a dark figure emerged from the shadows of Whitechapel, London, leaving a trail of unspeakable horror in his wake. This enigma, known only as Jack the Ripper, would become one of history's most infamous serial killers. His playground was the labyrinthine streets of Whitechapel, a district steeped in poverty, crime, and desperation. It was here that the Ripper found his victims, mostly destitute women earning their living as prostitutes. One by one, they were brutally murdered, their bodies left mutilated in a display of violence that sent shockwaves through Victorian London. As the death toll rose, so did the fear and confusion. The city was in the grips of a terror it had never known before, The eerie silence of the London nights was broken only by the whispers of the name that would come to define this reign of horror, Jack the Ripper. This marked the beginning of a reign of terror that would forever be etched in the annals of criminal history. The victims of this ruthless predator, all women of desperate circumstances, became the unfortunate subjects of his sadistic tendencies. Their stories serve as a chilling testament to the terror that gripped the streets of Whitechapel in the autumn of 1888. The first victim, Mary Ann Nichols, was discovered in the early morning hours of August 31st. Her throat had been cut twice, and her abdomen horrifically mutilated. This marked the beginning of Jack the Ripper's reign of terror. A week later, on September 8th, Annie Chapman met a similar fate. The brutality of her murder, with her throat slashed and organs removed, indicated a killer growing bolder and more monstrous with each passing day. Then, in the early hours of September 30th, two more victims were claimed in quick succession. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were murdered within an hour of each other, their deaths marking a violent escalation in the Ripper's spree. The final victim, Mary Jane Kelly, was found on November 9th. Her murder was the most gruesome of all. She was killed in her own room, her body mutilated beyond recognition. It was a horrifying end to a terrifying sequence of events. Each woman lived a life marred by poverty and hardship, only to meet an end of unspeakable violence at the hands of an unknown killer. The police, despite their best efforts, were left confounded. Each crime scene yielded few clues, and with forensic science in its infancy, there was little to be done to bring the perpetrator to justice. As the murders continued, the public's fear turned to hysteria. The gruesome nature of the crimes, coupled with the killer's evasion of capture, created an atmosphere of panic and dread that hung heavy over the city of London. Each death, more brutal than the last, sent shockwaves of fear through the heart of London. The victims, innocent lives lost in the most horrific manner, were a grim reminder of the monster lurking in the shadows of Whitechapel. As the body count rose, so did the pressure on law enforcement to unmask this mysterious killer. The Metropolitan Police, led by Commissioner Sir Charles Warren, found themselves in a desperate race against time, wading through a sea of clues, testimonies, and dead ends. The police were dealing with a criminal unlike any they had encountered before. Jack the Ripper was careful, leaving behind a chilling signature but few tangible clues. The killer's gruesome modus operandi suggested a familiarity with anatomy, leading some to suspect that he could be a butcher or a surgeon. Many letters were sent to the police and newspapers, purportedly from the killer himself, adding another layer of complexity to the investigation. The most famous of these, the From Hell letter, came with a piece of a human kidney, further intensifying the public's fear and fascination. The media played a significant role in shaping the narrative of the Ripper murders. Newspapers, in their quest to sell more copies, often sensationalized the gruesome details of the crimes, fueling public hysteria. The name Jack the Ripper itself was born out of this media frenzy, forever immortalizing the killer in the annals of criminal history. The public's reaction was one of fear and morbid curiosity. The streets of Whitechapel, once bustling with life, now echoed with whispers of the phantom-like killer. Despite the terror, there was also a sense of defiance among the residents. Vigilante groups formed, patrolling the streets at night in a bid to catch the Ripper. Yet, the elusive killer remained a step ahead, seemingly vanishing into the foggy London night after each murder. The lack of concrete evidence and a clear suspect led to wild speculations and conspiracy theories. Despite their best efforts, the identity of the killer remained out of reach, shrouded in mystery. Over the years, countless theories have emerged, each one more intriguing than the last. From the foggy alleyways of Victorian London, a web of suspects has been spun, ensnaring an astonishing range of individuals in its threads. At the heart of these theories lie some of the era's most respected professionals. It's been speculated that the precision of the mutilations suggests a surgeon's hand. One suspect was Sir William Gull, Queen Victoria's personal physician. Accused by conspiracy theorists of being part of a royal cover-up, Gull's name has been etched into the annals of Ripper lore. Yet the web spreads wider still. Another strand leads us to the royal family itself. Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence, was implicated in a theory that suggested the murders were part of a royal conspiracy. Though this theory has largely been discredited, it serves to illustrate the broad scope of the investigation and the lengths to which people have gone in their quest for answers. The web also ensnares suspects from the lower rungs of society. Siweron Klusowski, a Polish barber, was another individual who found himself under suspicion. Later convicted of poisoning 3 of his wives, his name was added to the long list of those suspected of being the infamous killer. As the years have passed, the web of suspects has only become more complex and tangled. Modern forensic techniques have breathed new life into the investigation, shedding light on old evidence and bringing new suspects into focus. DNA analysis, geographic profiling, and other advanced methods have all been employed in the quest to unmask Jack the Ripper. Yet, despite these advancements and the myriad of theories, the true identity of Jack the Ripper remains one of history's greatest unsolved mysteries. The web of suspects continues to grow, a testament to the enduring fascination and enigma surrounding this infamous figure. The shadow of Jack the Ripper continues to loom over the streets of Whitechapel, a chilling reminder of a time marked by fear and uncertainty. The specter of this enigmatic figure, who once cast a shroud of terror over Victorian London, still resonates today, more than a century later. Despite the passage of time and advances in forensic science, the identity of the infamous killer remains a mystery, a puzzle that has yet to be solved. His reign of terror, the brutal murders, the media frenzy, the unsuccessful manhunt, and the myriad of theories and suspects. All these elements combine to form the chilling legacy of Jack the Ripper. This enduring enigma serves as a stark reminder of the fragility of human life and the depths to which human depravity can sink. Though his identity remains hidden in the fog of history, the legacy of Jack the Ripper continues to haunt us, a grim testament to the depths of human depravity.